Kristian Birkeland. Alright. Born December 13th, 1867. And June 15th, 1917. This guy's old school. Nominated for the Nobel Prize 7 times, never won. We will see shortly why he never won. Birkeland's vision of what we now know as Birkeland currents became the source of a controversy that continued for over half a century, because their existence could not be confirmed from ground-based measurements alone. His theory was disputed and ridiculed at the time as a fringe theory by mainstream scientists, most notoriously by the eminent British geophysicist and mathematician Sydney Chapman, who argued the mainstream view that currents could not cross the vacuum of space, and therefore the currents had to be generated by the Earth. Birkeland's theory of the aurora continued to be dismissed by mainstream astrophysicists until after his death in 1917. It was notably championed by the Swedish plasma scientist Hans Alfvén, but Alfvén's work in turn was also disputed by Chapman. Now, Chapman said, the mainstream view is that currents could not cross the vacuum of space. Well, Mr. Chapman, in a way you're correct, but you had a problem. Charged particles can cross the vacuum of space. Being that vacuum, there's very little friction, the charged particles will continue on their way through outer space until they get aligned by the magnetic field of another star, such as the Earth, through the polar regions. Another point I want to bring up is that Birkeland was a fringe theorist. We accept the ideas now. We accept them. They're correct. Because in 1967, we had proof of it from the U.S. Navy satellite 1963-38 Charlie, launched in 1963 and carrying a magnetometer above the ionosphere. And the magnetic disturbances were observed on nearly every pass over the high latitude regions of the Earth. They were originally interpreted as hydromagnetic waves, but on later analysis it was realized that they were due to field-aligned or Birkeland currents. I think that's fantastic. Kristian Birkeland was a Norwegian scientist, and he made expeditions above the Arctic Circle to study these phenomenon. Now, I enjoy hearing about people like that. I enjoy hearing the ideas that were fringe in the past or eventually shown to be correct. As well, in my own research, I'm told by many older gentlemen that I will be very old myself, if not already dead by the time people realize what I do and the theory I'm working on. But I'm not too sure if it's as simple as sending up a probe to space to measure magnetic disturbances. I don't think it's as simple as that. It's more along the lines of a philosophical reasoning where you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together to find the more reasonable conclusion. And also, it's a good history lesson for me, because to understand that not all science is accepted right off the bat because you have people making theories. No. What usually happens is, what I'm finding out is, you had one gentleman many hundreds of years, decades, having to struggle with getting an idea out there. And that completely contradicts the mainstream's view, to where they look up into the sky, they publish a paper, they get mainstream press, and then boom, they get the Nobel Prize. See, there's a big difference between the two. There's a big difference between you're doing research, you're trying your best, and you're vilified by eminent physicists and mathematicians, to eventually you're proven right till long after you're dead, There's a big difference between that and the mainstream view, to where you can just take a LHC device, smash particles, find another particle, and boom, you have a Nobel Prize. There's a big difference between the two. And I would love my readers to understand what that difference really means. It means that science is hammered out in front of us. You have many hundreds of years of time that have to pass before we actually get what we're talking about, before we really get it. And also, fringe theorists sometimes can have incredible ideas. So if you want to look into new ideas, new ways of looking at things, yes, look into fringe theories. But as well, realize how many fringe theories were back then in Kristian Birkeland's time. Really. How many fringe theories existed in Kristian Birkeland's time in 1900, 1905? And to really understand history behind science and the history behind progress. Today is March 31st, 2015.